Before he was the prince of darkness, he was the most radiant being heaven had ever seen, a guardian whose beauty reflected the very light of God himself. This is the story of Lucifer, not as the enemy we know today, but as heaven's brightest guardian before the fall. Welcome to Divine War Stories, where we uncover the untold battles, forgotten heroes, and hidden truths of the war between light and darkness. If you love stories that take you behind the scenes of heaven's greatest conflicts, you're in the right place. In the heart of the celestial realm, where colors danced like living rivers of light, there stood a guardian whose very presence commanded awe. His name was Lucifer, the light-bearer, a title that wasn't just a name but a declaration of his role. His voice carried harmonies that could silence storms, and his wings shimmered like molten gold under the throne's eternal radiance. Among the hosts of heaven he wasn't merely respected, he was revered. Angels watched him as one might watch the sunrise, knowing they were in the presence of something rare, something crafted with unparalleled care by the Creator himself. Lucifer's role was unlike any other. He wasn't just a soldier in the celestial army, he was a guardian of the throne, a protector of divine order. His armor was not forged in metal but woven from light itself, brighter than 1,000 suns yet gentle to the touch. When he walked the halls of heaven, the very air seemed to hum in reverence, as if creation itself acknowledged his authority. His loyalty to the Creator was unquestioned, his purpose unshaken, his radiance unmatched by any other being in the heavenly court. The music of heaven often began with him. Leading the choirs, Lucifer's voice was like a river of crystal, carrying praises toward the throne in waves that wrapped the entire kingdom in worship. The stars themselves seemed to pause in their courses to listen, their light flickering in harmony with the melodies. His artistry was not mere skill but an offering, each note a thread in the vast tapestry of glory woven daily before God's presence. In these moments, Lucifer was not just heaven's brightest guardian, he was its most devoted worshipper. His beauty was not vanity, for in those days there was no pride in him. The perfection of his form, the strength of his spirit, and the brilliance of his mind were all seen as gifts meant to serve a greater good. His eyes reflected the colors of creation, blues deeper than oceans, golds richer than sunlight, and his gaze brought peace to those he protected. Angels trusted him implicitly, knowing that no threat could pierce heaven's gates while Lucifer stood watch. He was the unshakable sentinel, the embodiment of heaven's security. Lucifer's authority was second only to the Creator's. He moved between the armies of heaven like a commander born for war, yet his greatest joy was not in battle but in harmony. He understood the balance of power and peace, strength and gentleness. When disputes arose among the hosts, it was often Lucifer who restored order, his words carrying both the firmness of law and the warmth of mercy. His leadership was not enforced through fear but through the respect he had earned over ages of faithful service. Even the youngest of angels would gather near him, drawn by his wisdom and his stories of creation's early days. He spoke of the moment when the first light pierced the void, when the universe bloomed into existence under the Creator's command. To hear him tell it was to stand at the edge of that very dawn, to feel the pulse of divine power as galaxies spun into motion. In these moments, Lucifer was more than a guardian, he was a teacher, a mentor, a guide to the mysteries of the Most High. Lucifer's power extended beyond the battlefield. He understood the language of the stars, the hidden music that ran through the fabric of the cosmos. With a gesture, he could weave patterns of light across the sky, creating displays that filled heaven's courtyards with wonder. These acts were not for his own glory but to draw the eyes of all toward the Creator, the true source of beauty and power. His every action was a reflection of his devotion, a living testimony to his allegiance. At the center of his being was the fire of purpose. He had been made to guard, to lead, to inspire, and he embraced that calling with every fiber of his existence. His strength was not in isolation but in unity with the other archangels, a brotherhood forged in the eternal light of the throne. Together they formed a wall no shadow could breach. Yet even among them, Lucifer's presence was singular, a light so bright that it seemed impossible it could ever fade. The throne room was his second home. There, beneath the emerald rainbow that encircled the seat of God, Lucifer stood watch. He knew the rhythms of heaven's court, the ebb and flow of angelic assemblies, the sacred moments when silence fell and the Creator's voice thundered through eternity. In those moments, Lucifer's heart burned with a joy that could not be measured. He lived to hear that voice, to serve that will, to stand as a living shield between the throne and any threat that might arise. But beyond his duty, there was a mystery to him, a depth in his thoughts that even his closest allies could not fully see. It was not suspicion they felt, for there was no reason to doubt him then, but a recognition that Lucifer carried a mind as vast as the heavens themselves. His understanding of justice, beauty, and order was unmatched. If any angel seemed unshakable, eternal in his loyalty, it was Lucifer, heaven's brightest guardian, unaware of the storm that would one day rise from within. If you are enjoying this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to help this channel reach more people. Now let's continue. The vast courts of heaven echoed with his steps, and wherever Lucifer went, light seemed to follow. His laughter was rare but unforgettable, like the ringing of a silver bell in a place already filled with music. He was not only a guardian but a friend to many, one who could kneel beside a wounded soldier of light and speak words that mended more than flesh. His compassion was not weakness, it was strength refined, a force that reminded the armies why they fought and for whom. Yet even in his compassion, there was a quiet intensity, as though his heart burned with a constant, unquenchable fire. Lucifer's counsel was sought not only by fellow warriors but by those in heaven's courts who pondered the mysteries of creation. His insight seemed limitless, as if he could peer into the very thoughts of the Creator's design. He spoke of balance, of the harmony between justice and mercy, strength and gentleness, power and humility. And yet, there were moments when his gaze drifted toward the far edges of the universe, as if he longed to see beyond what had been revealed. In those moments, none could guess what thoughts stirred in the mind of heaven's most radiant guardian. The heavenly archives held records of countless victories in which Lucifer had played a decisive role. There were battles against forces that had dared to rise against the light, shadows that had tested the boundaries of heaven's dominion. In every account his courage shone. He did not only lead from the front. He stood where the danger was greatest, where the fight was fiercest, where the glory of victory was tempered by the cost of sacrifice. His name was written in the songs of angels, sung with honor and reverence. Yet, perfection has a weight that few can carry. Though none saw it then, the constant expectation, the flawless service, and the unbroken loyalty placed upon him a crown heavy with unseen strain. The higher one stands, the further there is to fall, and Lucifer's place was higher than any. The beauty that once humbled him began to be noticed not only by others but by himself. And though he would not admit it, a quiet awareness of his own greatness began to settle deep within. Still, in those days his service remained pure. He walked the streets of gold without a shadow in his heart. He stood upon the walls of heaven and looked out over the realms beyond, feeling the steady assurance that nothing could ever shake this kingdom. His devotion was unshaken, his faith unbroken. Yet somewhere, faint as the first whisper of a distant storm, a thought had been planted, a thought that one day would grow into the seed of rebellion. When the great assemblies gathered, Lucifer's voice still led the worship. His harmonies rose like rivers of light, wrapping the throne in endless praise. But deep in the quiet of his mind, he began to wonder why the one who had given him such beauty and wisdom should not share more of his power. It was not yet desire, not yet envy, just curiosity, he told himself. And yet, curiosity, when left unchecked, has a way of becoming hunger. The Creator's glory was infinite, and Lucifer knew it. He had sworn to protect it, to defend it at any cost. But the closer he stood to that glory, the more he began to compare. Why should only one sit upon the highest throne? Why should all light flow from a single source? The questions did not come often, nor loudly, but they came enough to cast the faintest shadow upon the brilliance of his heart. And shadows, once born, tend to grow. Still, heaven knew nothing of what would come. The other angels saw no change in him. His wings still caught the light in 1,000 shades of gold. His laughter still lifted hearts. His leadership still inspired courage. But the war that would one day shake the heavens was not born on a battlefield, it was born here, in the silence of an angel's thoughts. In that silence, the brightest guardian in heaven began to imagine a different kind of kingdom, one where he was not only a servant but a ruler. This is where the story of Lucifer before the fall begins to darken, not yet with open defiance, but with the quiet drift of the heart. For now he remained heaven's jewel, the commander of light, the most trusted of all guardians. Yet each day the distance between who he was and who he would become grew by the width of a single thought. And heaven, radiant, perfect, eternal, would one day know war because of it. If this glimpse into the untold past of heaven's brightest guardian stirred your imagination, there's more to uncover. The choices, the whispers, and the moment the unthinkable happened. Subscribe to Divine War Stories and join me as we journey deeper into the greatest conflict the universe has ever known, where light and darkness were not always enemies, but once stood side by side.